All right, what else do you have besides Hodge and Singer available today? How about Ms. McKinney?
We got one other motion like this maybe relevant as well.
All right.
This is the so-called Brady motion that I told the court earlier this week I'd be filing. And I think this matter deserves this court's very, very serious consideration. It's a very serious motion, and we take it seriously. And specifically, what I'd like the court to be aware of is the declaration of a deputy district attorney by the name of Lucienne Coleman. In this declaration, she spells out in detail, through conversations with Sean Snyder Chapman of my office, what we think.
My recollection is that during one of our, I don't recollect if it was a 1054.7 or a pitches, I think it was a pitches motion. My recollection is that I ordered the disclosure of a statement that Ms. Coleman gave. Is
yes,
that correct?
you did, Your Honor, and a redacted statement that addresses, and I'd like to talk about that. The statement we got does not comport with what she says the facts are, and it's very, very serious. So if the court will allow me, I'd like to spell this out. This is a matter in which Ms. Coleman is on a day off today. She is standing by the phone and is available should you want her to testify today. She has been a deputy district attorney for some 16 years, and I might indicate that I was the assistant DA when she was hired, and I've known her for a very long time. That has nothing to do with what she's done in this case, however. She, on July 19th, 1994, she was working in complaints, and at that time, she had a conversation with LAPD homicide detective Andy Purdy here in this building. And Purdy was there to file a case. At that time, this story had first surfaced about the possibility of Fuhrman planting the glove at Rockingham. And she indicated to Purdy at that time and commented how ridiculous she thought that thought was. Purdy responded that these allegations were not ridiculous at all and that he wouldn't put any such thing past Fuhrman. He then went on to tell Lucienne Coleman about his experiences in working with Fuhrman at West LA Station, Your Honor. At that time, Purdy had recently married a Jewish woman, and he returned from apparently his honeymoon or whatever, and it was his contention that Fuhrman had painted Purdy's locker with swastikas. And during this conversation, Purdy, Ms. Coleman, and another DA by the name of Julie Sergogian walked up, and they heard many of the things that Purdy was saying about Fuhrman. Later on, and in July of 1994, Deputy DA Ellen Burke told Lucienne Coleman about a black officer who had heard Fuhrman at a picnic or barbecue talking about and discussing his relationship with Nicole Simpson. Quote, that her quote-unquote boob job had looked real great. Burke did not tell the name of the black officer at the time, but Ms. Coleman later confirmed that it was an officer named Maxwell. Some of these names may become relevant to you when you think back of what you saw. And then continuing on, a day or two later, an LAPD detective by the name of Mark Arneson, this is in July of 1994, Your Honor, came to file a case before Lucienne Coleman. The topic, as usual, then turned to Simpson. And Arneson, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Your Honor, I would point out for the court, at this point in time, Mr. Cochran is reading, apparently for the benefit of the public, what is contained in a declaration filed under seal to the court. Has the court had an opportunity to review this declaration?
No, these matters.
Nor have we.
Took to the bench
Two
before.
things. First of all, it's not filed under seal, and I'm not reading it. I'm using the references to speak out the facts as I understand it. As usual, Your Honor, they want to cut off everything that relates to them. This is a very important motion. I have a right to spell this out to the court. It's very serious, and it bears upon our ability to go forward at this point.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, as I indicated to the court, Arneson said that he already knew about the boob job comment and that he had talked to two other officers who said they'd heard Fuhrman make such statements about Nicole's breasts as well. Arneson did not say who these two officers were. Then in the first 2 weeks of August of 1994, this deputy DA, Lucienne Coleman, went to see Marsha Clark and Bill Hodgman as she was troubled about the information that she had heard. Ms. Clark, she says, had been a friend of hers for many years, and they'd been friends. She found Clark and Hodgman in Clark's office and told them what she'd heard, what I just indicated to the court. By then, she had also heard that Fuhrman walked around on weekends wearing Nazi paraphernalia. When she told Clark and Hodgman what she knew, Clark stated, "This is BS," in no uncertain terms. Hodgman suggested the office should look into these allegations. Clark said, "This is just BS being put out by the defense." Coleman then indicated that she hadn't heard any of these allegations from the defense, but rather from LAPD officers. And she suggested that the LA County District Attorney's Office look into these allegations. Now, Your Honor, it's important as I go through this. This was in the first 2 weeks of August of 1994. She then spoke with Clark and Hodgman about matters unrelated to Detective Fuhrman. And thereafter, she suggested
Mr. Cochran,
that...
excuse me, forgive me for interrupting you, but refresh my recollection as to when it was those matters were just those, Ms. Coleman, Ms. Burke, Ms. Segogian, Detective Maxwell, Detective Purdy. My recollection is that the court ordered the disclosure of those reports to you with those names, but I'm just refresh my recollections of when that occurred.
As I recall, Your Honor, and I don't have the exact date, Mr. Hodgman came down and indicated that he had a matter to discuss with the court. This was brought to the court's attention at some point. It started off by him saying he didn't think this had any basis in fact, but it was much, much later. It was this year. It was in maybe February or March of this year, and we can find out and let you know.
Okay.
What we got, Your Honor, was a redacted version, and you'll see when I tie this in. The version we got certainly bespeaks a cover-up or something, because what we got, you couldn't tell anything from this. And so that's the point I want to point out, and let me continue on if I might, Your Honor. This, so Marcia Clark continues on, this is BS, says that over and over again, and then it goes on and says, I again suggested the DA's office look into these allegations because the defense would one day learn of the information and questions might be asked about why it had not been revealed to the by the DA's office sooner. This is what this witness is prepared to testify as an honest deputy district attorney. She said, and this is what she quotes her former friend Marcia Clark as saying. She then angrily stated, Clark said she was tired of other DAs trying to get involved in her case for their own self-aggrandizement. And she went on to say that she had no interest in this case other than doing the right thing and understanding what Brady mentioned. She also mentioned that she thought the information might prove false and they should really check it out. Later on, she saw Detective Arneson in the hall and asked him if the defense knew about the allegations against Fuhrman. Of course, he said, well, perhaps they do because of Pavlik. There's another deputy DA, Jeanette Bernstein, was present during that conversation. On August 24th, 1994, Your Honor, another key date, this deputy DA received a call, an irate call from Officer Purdy. And Purdy wanted to know if she had contacted the media about what he had told her. She told him that he hadn't. Purdy went on to know why she'd informed Clark and Hodgman about their conversation. He was upset, and he told her at that time that he would deny having told her anything about Fuhrman and that he would lie about the whole thing. And I told Purdy that if ever I had to testify, I would tell the truth, that he said he would lie. And she's, in fact, doing that now. On August 25th, 1994, Your Honor, after that, Purdy left a message for her to call him back. When she did, Purdy told me that his quote-unquote story was going to be that Fuhrman was only suspected of having left the swastikas in his locker, that it was never proven. She reminded him that it was not what he had told her in July. Purdy's indicated that was going to be his story now. Purdy also said that he had kept a log, and this is a key thing. Purdy told Lucianne Coleman that he had kept a log of all incidents involving Fuhrman when they both worked in West Los Angeles Station, but that he had destroyed the log that morning at 3:00 a.m. so that he would not have to turn it over to the prosecution. That becomes a very key matter because Purdy, of course, remembers what's in that log, even if he did destroy it. On February 13th, 1995, Lucianne Coleman spoke to Bill Hodgman by telephone. And Hodgman told her that he had heard from 2 deputy DAs in the branch and area offices that they had some negative information about Fuhrman. Now, this is in February now. Keep in mind, this all occurred in July and August earlier. She then had to remind Bill Hodgman of the conversation she'd had with Clark and he back in August. Hodgman claimed to have had no recollection of her ever discussing Fuhrman during that conversation. And she reminded Mr. Hodgman of the information that she'd given back in August. He wanted names of the officers who had given her the information and said he needed to check with the officers. And she said she needed to check with the officers first before she gave out their names. My recollection is that she called Purdy and told him she was going to give Hodgman his name. Purdy indicated that he would tell Hodgman the story he had mentioned in his prior conversation, not what he told her originally. She then proceeded to call Hodgman and gave him Purdy's name. She also told Hodgman about Purdy's log. And I don't think we ever saw anything about this log ever in any of the documents. And you'll have to search your memory as to what you were told in the conversation or when you got the records from IA. She relayed the conversation she'd had with Detective Arneson and gave Hodgman the names of Segogian and Burke as DAs who'd also heard some portions of these conversations. Hodgman and she had 3 or 4 conversations that night. That's in February of 1995. Hodgman said that Detective Lang would be conducting the investigation into these allegations. Later, Hodgman said that Internal Affairs would be conducting the investigation. She called Burke and Sergosian to tell them that she had given Hodgman their names and Internal Affairs would be contacting them shortly. On February 14th, Your Honor, 1995, while she was on vacation, she got a call from Purdy at home. And Purdy said that he had destroyed the logs, again, and that he would not testify against the prosecution no matter what. Purdy said that the LAPD was protecting Mark Fuhrman because it felt that the defense was using Fuhrman as a scapegoat. Purdy said he could lose his job for speaking out against Fuhrman in view of the fact that the LAPD, and she quotes, was circling the wagons, end quote. On February 15th, she was in fact interviewed by Internal Affairs, and I think that'll probably be the date you'll find if you look back. She indicates this interview was more like an interrogation because of the hostile tone of the questioning and the type of questioning from these so-called investigators from IA. She said she was asked questions, isn't it true that you think OJ Simpson is innocent and you want to have him acquitted? And did anyone besides your husband ever hear your telephone conversations with Officer Purdy? From February 16th to February 24th, this deputy DA requested of her office a copy of the tape of her interview with Internal Affairs. On February 24th, Mr. Hodgman indicated to her that a tape might be available for her that day. Later that day, Mr. Hodgman came to her and informed her that he discussed the matter with Assistant DA Frank Sunstead and that it had been decided that no copies of the tape should be released while this case was pending, because the tape might be Brady material and would then have to be turned over to the defense. Hodgman further indicated that it had also been decided that the tape should only be turned over as part of a pitcher's motion by the defense and would therefore not be given to me at that time. She still to this date does not have that tape and has told me that their office will not ask for the tape until the Simpson case is over. I told the officers, she goes on to say, from Internal Affairs, everything that I had been told, including the fact that Purdy had kept logs and had told me that he had destroyed them as he would never testify against the prosecution. Internal Affairs asked her if she thought Purdy had destroyed evidence. I said that I thought that Purdy would do anything to avoid testifying in this case, and further that Purdy had specifically told her he did not want to testify in any circumstances. This lady came to our office the other day. I didn't want to put her in a compromising position. I didn't issue a subpoena for her. She gave us this declaration. I asked her not to sign it, but to verify that it was true, because she was told, or has been told by one of her supervisors, that the DA's office wants to go slow on this, and that if she believes that if she signs this, she has to appear in this court. Let me quote. During the course of her conversation just last night with Sean Chapman, she's been told that at least one of her supervisors told her to go slow on this matter, and it's her feeling that if she signs this declaration, appears in this court, it will adversely affect her status of a deputy district attorney. However, she said she's willing to make that sacrifice because what they've done is wrong. It's from one of their own people. The court needs to take this and look back at what you gave us. The redacted version we had bears no semblance of this. We are entitled to this information. We should have had it back in July and August. We should have had it in February. What we got is a travesty. If you look at what we got, it doesn't make any sense at all. And we need this before we can go forward with Fuhrman. They can talk all they want about witnesses and moving ahead. We have an absolute right in defending our client to have this information. This supposedly is a search for truth. I have my doubts, but I have to do everything I can for my client in this instance. And when these kind of things are happening, we have to demand an investigation. It doesn't matter to me if we work on Saturday, Sunday, holidays, or whatever. We do that anyway, Your Honor. That doesn't matter. But the point is, we need to have these matters resolved before we can go forward and effectively represent our clients. And I mentioned in court the other day that we were going to ask Your Honor to provide us with the questions asked of the DAs in camera regarding the meeting where Detective Fuhrman was prepared, because we think that now with this additional information, we think it's entirely relevant. The court may not have known the appropriate questions to ask. All we're trying to do, Your Honor, is have a level playing field here and to be able to get this information before the jury. Because I need hardly point out to this court, this is a jury trial. This is not a court trial. The jurors will decide the evidence in this case, and we have a right in representing Mr. Simpson It's a fundamental constitutional right to have this information under Brady. And you've seen other examples such as those photographs where we have possible exculpatory evidence. We want it. We have a right to have that before we go forward in this critical part of our case at the very end. And now we have somebody from their own office, and there are other DAs who I think will also back her up. Who's a very credible person who puts her job on the line in the interest of telling the truth and being honest in this matter. And we find out that there's been attempts to cover it up. And so that's only one way to put it. So we need a hearing on this. Take as much time as they want. She's on call. She can come down here today if they want. What I've indicated to you, she will say on the stand. We need to resolve this.
All right, Mr. Cochran, just so I understand, the two matters that you find of interest in this discussion with Ms. Coleman is the observation by Detective Fuhrman regarding Nicole Brown Simpson's anatomy, and secondly, the racial animosity regarding Jews. Is that correct?
Well, regarding
Those
Jews,
are the two.
Well, yes, well, the swastikas and that sort of thing, but also, Your Honor, the log. I think if
And
this,
Purdy's log.
obviously, if there's a log of all his misconduct in West Los Angeles, I'm sure it'll track some of the things he's telling Laura McKinney about. We have a right to those things, Judge. I mean, I think
Let me ask you a question, though. If your recollection is correct, that in February or March, these names were turned over to you. In my recollection of our discussions and the hearings that I conducted, I recollect Detective Maxwell, Detective Purdy, obviously Ms. Coleman, Ms. Segojian, Ms. Burke, Detective Arneson, these names coming up, and those names were disclosed to you. And my recollection of the comment about Nicole Brown Simpson's breast enlargement was mentioned in those reports. I don't recollect if there was inquiry about the swastika incident. I don't recollect that, but I recollect something about swastikas. Have you had the opportunity to interview all of these individuals besides Ms. Coleman, Ms. Segojian?
We have, let me put it this way, Your Honor. First of all, Your Honor, let me say this as respectfully as I can. You may find it hard to believe, but some of us believe there is a conspiracy of silence. Police officers aren't going to talk to us about this case. They don't talk to anybody. There's special rules regarding this case, Your Honor. They're not going to talk to us about this case. Deputy DAs, where their job is on the line, it's very hard to talk to them also. This Lucien Coleman is a very unique person, and there are some very fine deputy DAs up there who very well may do this, who may speak out regarding this. But there's no mention, and the point we had to rely upon Your Honor looking at this stuff. And I think there may have been some mention about Nicole Brown Simpson's anatomy. Nothing about these logs. I'm pretty clear about that, as I recall, that we ever got, and we can show you the redacted copy. But we got left, because let me tell you, in talking to Ms. Coleman, the redacted version was something she can hardly recognize. She wants the tape. She says if you get the tape, you will see how IA works. They came at her as though she was the worst person in the world. It was an interrogation where she was made to feel like she was some sort of a traitor. In this instance, and it's outrageous. And that's what's actually happening here. So I don't think it's fair to put that back on us. We knew about certain things, and we're now trying to say to you that if these things are covered up, and there are other things, and I think you have to take this all together, Your Honor, just with regard to Henry Lee, as Barry Scheck has pointed out, those photographs that all of a sudden have been enhanced. We've been told there's no log, and now we find out all these things that Henry Lee immediately looks at the photographs, can tell their imprints walking in the back, that they have exculpatory evidence that they may not even know about. I mean, maybe part of this inadvertence, part of it may be negligence, part of it may be hiding it. But we have a right to Mr. Simpson. We cannot go any further without this.
So specifically, let's just get back to the fundamental of what you're asking here for then. Specifically, what you're asking for then is to make inquiry of Detective Purdy regarding this log and his recollection, correct?
Yes, we want to do that.
All right. And what else specifically?
We want, assuming the things that Ms. Coleman has indicated, we want to look at...
because the evidence that would be of interest to you and your client would be observations, direct observations by another LAPD officer, supposedly Purdy or Maxwell, regarding relevant misconduct or racial animosity by Detective Fuhrman, correct?
Absolutely.
All right.
And especially, and it also becomes very relevant if the prosecution knew about this early on, because they embraced this witness. And so, but I think we have, that's a pretty good starting point. Purdy, Coleman, if necessary. We have a declaration.
Well, Coleman is interesting only because she's the hearsay source for, somebody told me that Fuhrman said this.
Right, Fuhrman did this, and there
I mean,
was an
she
investigation.
she directs the inquiry, but she's not firsthand.
See, Judge, the problem is, if you recall, and I'll try to provide this for you, what we get from you is a little redacted thing. Everything's all cut out, and so you may want to go back yourself and take a look at this. We want, though, Purdy, Maxwell, Arneson, we want all these people under oath. That's what we want. We want them under oath. We're not going to trust what they tell us. We're not going to trust them. We want them under oath, and we think we have a right to do that. And that's why I'm bringing this motion up now. So we could, the witnesses. I've been telling you for the last week and a half, the witnesses I have at the end. But we have, and so there's no secret about that. But in view of Your Honor's ruling and what you cut out of what we're able to do, we cannot go forward until we pursue these things. It's very important to do that. So it doesn't matter. We don't mind working every day. If you want to have a hearing, have these officers here tomorrow, we'll be here. You want to have it tonight, we'll be here. You want to have it Sunday morning after I go to church, we'll be here. But the question is, let's get it on. But I think that we have a right to this. And as soon as we can, I want to take a break because I want to talk to Mr. Munger also, as I indicated to the court. That's another thing we have to deal with.
All right, Mr. Hodgman.
Your Honor, I have to confess I'm a mite perplexed by the defense bringing the motion at this particular time. As the court will recall, in February of this year, I brought these matters to the attention of the court. The court reviewed in camera a variety of material. I'm not sure what material, but presumably statements of the witnesses involved and various tapes. The court issued an order on March the 8th, 1995, directing that these materials be given to the defense. The defense had these witnesses' names. Apparently, and it's quite obvious, they've interviewed Ms. Coleman. They've had Officer Purdy's name, Detective Maxwell, and a number of other people's names, per the court's order, since March of this year. And I don't understand what we're doing here now. I presume that the court will make inquiry of the defense. Have they interviewed Detective Purdy or Officer Purdy? Have they interviewed Detective Maxwell?
They indicated no, they have not.
Well, they raise this now, and they indicate they'd like to have a Saturday session in order to pursue these matters. Where have they been with this information for the last 5 months? I brought it to the attention of the court last February. This information was in the hands of the defense before Detective Fuhrman even testified. So I asked the court to take this into consideration as they review this motion. But the defense has had these materials. Apparently they've had tapes. They've had redacted reports that the court provided to them. I don't understand what they're doing here now, filing this motion. I can suspect certain things, but I leave that unstated.
Mr. Cochran, would you provide to the court a copy of the reports and witness statements that you received?
I will. I just asked Mr. Douglas. Apparently it's in my office. I'm going to have it brought down here as soon as I can. He's going to call and get it down. Let me just respond briefly to Mr. Hodgman's question. First of all, I think you'll find, and I don't recall ever seeing anything about this log until Ms. Coleman told us about the log kept of Fuhrman's activities. Also, Your Honor, as Lucy and Coleman would tell you.
I have to tell you that, that's why I asked if you would produce those materials, because my recollection of reading those materials was that the log was mentioned and that Purdy's desire not to get dragged into this case was apparent from the statement of Ms. Coleman. But be that as it, let me see what's there, and then we'll take it from
Let's
from
do that.
point.
The other thing I just want to point out to the court, I mean, it's the height of naivete. Stand here and say that we've been told that Purdy's going to lie. He tells the DA he's going to lie, Deputy DA Lucy and Coleman. He's going to really tell us the truth. The question is, if he is going to lie, we need him under oath. We've seen we know the Fuhrman has lied. We need him under oath. This whole thing has brought out the worst in these people, and we need to get them under oath to see. That's all we're saying. And so we can't be held to that standard. I mean, we know about these people. We're going to go over to the station and talk to Arneson. They'd stonewall IA. And IA takes this hostile ear toward one witness who's trying to tell the truth and says, get this stuff out. It may not be true. That's the point. I'll get it for you.
Give me the stuff.
Certainly.
All right, well, I think that wraps it up at this point as far as all your comments.